Evening, everyone. Thank you. I'm Chris Sigurdsson, Chair of the Board of LRSD Board of Trustees. I call to order this May 6th regular meeting of our board. We are a little short today. We have regrets from Trustee Nordheim, Trustee Kolachuk, and Trustee Semignola. We have time of year for travel difficulties, and some people are hung up and not able to make it. So we are a little short. Trustee Nemeth is online, so there she is. Good. We're ready to go. Before we begin formally, did have some very bad news today. The passing of one of our LRSD Indigenous Council of Grandmothers and Grandfathers, Kukum Hilda Entiban, who we're all very familiar with. She was just with us at the board table last week. And it was a shock, but we all wish to guide her spirit. And I'd ask now that we all have a moment of silence for Kukum Hilda. Thank you, everyone. These moments of silence are becoming a very unpleasant regularity in our board, so let's pray that it ends here. We now move on to the LRSD land acknowledgement. This meeting will be read by our Vice Chair, Trustee Walker.
Thank you. I have done a bit of a more personal land acknowledgement. I was born, work, and live on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe and Inawak and Dakota peoples, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. I also acknowledge that Manitoba is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Dene peoples. I recognize and honor Shoal Lake 40 First Nation as the source of my clean drinking water, as well as the treaty territories that generate and provide the electricity powering my home, school where I teach, and our school division. I respect the treaties made on this land and acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and present. I dedicate myself as a parent, a teacher, and a school trustee to authentic alliances with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and cooperation. I further commit myself to helping the children in my care understand the importance of reconciliation in Indigenous communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Walker. We now move to welcome and announcements. I'd like to welcome everyone participating in this hybrid meeting. Board meetings follow a formal structure where the work of the board is conducted in a public setting that gathers parents, students, staff, and other community members. As chair, it is my duty to preserve order and decorum at all times. All in-person and verified virtual attendees are reminded to observe the procedural bylaws and to engage in a respectful and orderly manner. We'd like to remind everyone there is a 15-minute public question period at the end of the meeting where verified virtual participants and verified in-person participants can bring forward questions for clarification regarding items on today's agenda. If your questions are not related to tonight's agenda, please reach out to our division by email. Finally, please be aware we audio record our board meetings for accuracy, and a link to the live stream of the meetings of this meeting will be made available on the division's website. Unless approved, other photographs, personal recordings, audio, visual, or otherwise are not permitted. We move to our affirmation of our vision and mission. Our vision is for all members of our community to excel as caring, confident, capable, and resilient lifelong learners who contribute to a democratic and sustainable world. Our mission is to provide a safe, inclusive, and engaging environment where personal and collective learning are valued. Each of us reaches our full potential. Moving on then to the approval of the agenda for the regular board meeting of May 6th. There's a motion that the May 6th agenda for the regular board meeting be approved. I need a mover and a seconder. Trustee Turner, Trustee Walker. There's no questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried.
That's good for Trustee Nemeth. If you're having difficulty, you can do verbal. And you're muted, Trustee Nemeth. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Thank you.
Carried.
Then to the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting for April 29th, 2025. They've been distributed. Ask if any edits are necessary or changes are required. We should note that up until now, our new practice has been to have the land acknowledgements made personal and different each time, according to each, so it has more meaning according to each of the trustees. And previously our minutes simply acknowledged that we had the land acknowledgement, but as of now, the text of each trustee's individual words will now be reflected in the minutes. So, not hearing any changes, the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 29th, 2025 will be accepted as distributed. Next, we move to news. We have news from the Board of Trustees, this time provided by Trustee Turner. Turn over to Trustee Turner.
Thank you, Trustee Sigurdsson. I would like to talk about two things today. First one is Marion School Kitchen Brigades. Chef Rob at Marion School is running an awesome, incredible kitchen brigade for the students at Marion School. It's an after-school program where they get to learn how to whip up balanced meals. Classes happen on the first 3 Tuesdays of every month from about 3:30 to 5:30. In addition, twice a year, the students throw a celebration for the teachers and they cook up dishes from all over the globe. Secondly, I would like to talk about Spirit Week. I drive by Spirit Archwood School every weekday, and I got the chance to see some of the students walking into school wearing their Spirit Week attire, and they had many, but they based them all on books. So Monday was green eggs and ham, and they wore green, and then Tuesday was chicka chicka boom, where the kids wore clothing with letters and numbers on them. And the Wednesday was my favorite. They where the wild things are, encouraging the students to wear something wacky and wild. Thursday was the day the crayons quit, which they had to wear bright clothing. And then Friday was Llama Llama Red Pajama Day, which they wore their pajamas. But Wednesday was my favorite.
Yes,
That's it.
that sounds like a lot of fun.
It was nice seeing the kids walk at
That's
school.
great, that's great. Thank you so much for that, Trustee Turner. Any questions or comments on that? We would all like to have seen that. Next, we move to news from senior leadership team and provided by Assistant Superintendent Cormack.
Thank you. The H.S. Paul School Grade 3 and 4 students had a visit from the Seed Survivor program on April 29th. This touring interactive display brought their trailer and displays to the school. Each class had the opportunity to spend an hour interacting with the displays and learning about what plants need to grow and the importance of agriculture. This allowed students and staff to connect with Strategic Action 4.5 of our multi-year strategic plan pertaining to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. Over to Hastings, where they hosted a pizza numeracy night for parents and students to learn strategies focused on measurement, money, and time. And then over to Highbury School, where they had a very successful musical, Finding Nemo Jr., on April 29th and 30th. 6 amazing sold-out shows showcase the musical talents and interests of the students. And the chair and I got to sit next to each other and enjoy some delightful kindergarten students experiencing the seagulls fly through the audience and shed their feathers everywhere about us afternoon. At the Louisville Arts and Technology Center, talented students from the school put their skills to the test at the Skills Manitoba competition on April the 10th. These students were among the many participants from across the province to compete in over 40 hands-on contests, showcasing their expertise and passion in an Olympic-style event. We had medal winners from both the aesthetics area and the hairstyling area. Victor Wyatt School is abuzz with a lot of things happening. We want to recognize the new sensory room at Wyatt School, who received a generous donation from Tina Cable and Wyatt phys ed teacher Eric Cable through the Children's Rehabilitation Foundation. And this funded this beautiful new sensory room that you see there. Our occupational therapist, Megan Appleton, took the lead in designing a beautiful, supportive, and functional sensory space reflecting commitment to newer, inclusive, and trauma-sensitive practices. In grades 3 to 8 at Victor Wyatt School, they had been learning about the federal election, parties, leaders, and local candidates, and explored sources of election videos, ads, social media, to think critically about messages and media, and how to use reliable sources. Finally, at Wyatt, we want to congratulate the first time ever Wyatt students won the badminton tournaments and finished first and third place. And so we congratulate all of the athletes that participated in the event. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, and we were seated together in the middle of all the kinders for that wonderful Finding Nemo show. It was certainly a highlight for me. We made a lot of friends and it was very lively. Yes, right. I got to leave with the kinders. Everyone had to leave in order. So I got up with the kinders and I made sure I went to the right door, but it was, yeah, it was a great experience. It was really a good one. Thank you all for all that information. And now we have even more information. We have presentations to the board. I'm looking forward to this. It's a delegation to the board to talk to us about the name of Collège Béliveau. And who should I turn this to? Which SLT member?
Jeff will
Jeff?
Very good, thank you very much. I'm pleased to welcome this evening contingent staff from Collège Béliveau. The first to speak will be Principal Andrea Coley, followed by other members of the staff, and she will introduce them as they go along.
Just stretch a little bit, please.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, we acknowledge that we have our new divisional principal with us today, Mia Gunther. Welcome.
Can you give her permission to share her screen? She needs higher elevated permissions, please.
Yeah.
Can't see. Is the superintendent? Need my glasses.
Well, not quite. I've got a month before I.
You will be soon.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Your sign is wrong. That's why.
Yes.
I thought you were.
Digital principal.
Well, I am right now. My name's spelled right, so that's.
Welcome to the table, Annie. I'm squinting. Oh my God. Let's try the name. Actually, just appear there.
Yeah, no, you're okay.
Thank you very much for your patience, everyone. I'm Andrea Clody, the very proud principal of Collège Béliveau. And it's part of a long journey that we're here tonight. And we're very thankful to have this opportunity to address the board and SLT. This is something that's been discussed for a long time and kind of concretized the last 2 years. We have some very passionate staff members who are here, who are gonna share information. We've been anxiously awaiting to have the chance to do so. So for me, I just wanna share how this is something very important to us, and we are looking very much forward to hearing your feedback and our next steps in our journey. So thank you. So we're going to have different people. I believe Monsieur Miguel Naku will be starting. So we will pass the form to him. Merci.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Miguel Marcu. I am a teacher at Collège Béliveau. I teach grade 11 history, grade 10 geography, and grade 12 leadership. I do want to start off by saying I'm kind of impressed of how my voice is doing. I was at game 7 on Sunday and had zero voice yesterday, so I don't know about that, but it seemed to be doing okay. So like I said, my name is Miguel. This is Mélanie Dubois and the recruits, also teachers at our school. We are passing out some handouts for you guys to have a look at. Let's see just about what we're here for today. And so to get us going here, just a little overview on what we'll be going over. We'll be going over the background of the name of the school, the process, the research we've done, the precedents, the TRC's 94 calls to actions, the LRC policies, and then what the next steps could be. So to start, a little bit of background. So Collège Béliveau is named after Arthur Béliveau, who oversaw the Cross Lake Residential School and St. Mary's Indian Residential School in Kenora. The little snippet you see there is from the University of Manitoba Archives. I do believe as well that it was from the Centenaire from St. Boniface in 1967 as well. And so it just clearly states in the second paragraph that the school is in fact named after Mr. Arthur Béliveau and not, like everyone thinks, Mr. Jean Béliveau, who has nothing to do with the school. You'd be surprised how many people don't. Just so the process here, so how we got to this point. And so this was originally a student-led inquiry in 2015 from a former teacher, Monsieur Joël Tétrault, who is currently with Le Bureau d'Éducation Française at the moment. But this was a student-led inquiry in 2015 with his history class as to kind of looking into why things are named the way they are and where do names of monuments and buildings come from. And that's kind of where the conversation started as to what is Béliveau. And so in September 2023, our midweek networking team, which is us plus a few other members, got together and decided that we should probably have a look at this a little bit further, we'll say, in more detail. And so once we kind of started doing a little research, finding out exactly what we may or may not have here, we thought we would start looking at the next steps as to what we could do to kind of proceed with something like this. And so as per the guidelines, in November 2023, we put a letter together and we forwarded it to the Assistant Superintendent of LRSD in November 2023. And just below is the referencing of the naming of facilities policy in LRSD, just to make sure we're following the correct steps. And furthermore, in September 2024, the committee were asked to compile more research, further proving Arthur Béliveau's ties to the residential school system. And in October 2024, our research was shared with our lead assistant superintendent and the superintendent. And then in April 2025, our committee was invited to present at today's board meeting. And that's how we got here. So once again, just before we get into deep dive, as we'll say, just kind of an overview of Béliveau's involvements. So as Archbishop of St. Boniface, from 1915 to 1955, Monsignor Arthur Béliveau oversaw the Oblates of Mary Immaculate. So that was a missionary order, most known for their efforts of evangelizing First Nations peoples. In addition to founding missions in as many Indigenous communities as possible, they also took up the cause of education. Their first industrial school opened in Libret in 1884, and they would open 10 other industrial and residential schools in the late 19th century, first half of the 20th.
And that information is in quotes because it comes from La Société Historique of St. Boniface. So that's the reference bottom there. So the next few slides that we're going to get into are more so about our research. And so it ties Arthur Béliveau directly to many residential schools across Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario, but more specifically to two in particular that have already been named, St. Mary's Residential School, as well as Cross Lake Residential School. So the first two names that we see here are Langevin and Béliveau. And so the only reason that Langevin is mentioned is because we'll see his name later on when they opened up the first residential school of St. Mary's. And Langevin handpicked Béliveau to be successor. So Langevin was Archbishop of St. Boniface of the diocese prior to Béliveau, and Béliveau worked under him, and he handpicked him to be his successor. So those two names we'll see a little bit later on, and this is also from La Société Historique of St. Boniface. So moving forward, I just want to mention that we also found in the legislation, so this is the Incorporation Act of the Oblates of Mary Immaculate. The Oblates of Mary Immaculate, the acronym that you'll see throughout our slides is the OMI, and that was the religious entity that, according to the Manitoba law, and it was written into law, that the Roman Catholic Church in any province of any parish of the province of Manitoba had the power to establish and manage schools. So this is a list of the residential schools that were operated by the St. Boniface Diocese. So I'm not going to name them all, but they're at the top there. And more specifically, the ones that are of interest to us are the ones that we have links to. So the first one is in Lestock, Saskatchewan, and until 1969, it was operated by the Missionary of Oblates of Mary Immaculate, so the OMIs that we've already talked about that Béliveau oversaw. We also have a link to St. Mary's Indian Residential School that will come later on, and we have quite a bit of information tying Béliveau directly to that school in particular. Cross Lake is the next one, and it was originally a day school until Monseigneur Béliveau turned it into a residential school in 1950. And finally, the last one is Sandy Bay Residential School. And if you click on that link, you'll see that there's a list of names of children, and all those children died during Monsieur Béliveau's tenure as Bishop of St. Boniface. So this is just a screenshot from more of our research, and this ties Béliveau directly to St. Mary's Indian Residential School, and it was formerly known as St. Anthony's Roman Catholic School. So it's had a few names throughout history, but it was last known as St. Mary's. And throughout our research, and according to the NCTR, the National Commission for Truth and Reconciliation, in their records, it shows that Langevin ordered the establishment of this school. And if we remember to a few slides back, Langevin is the one who handpicked Béliveau to be his successor. Father Charles Cahill is another name that we'll see later on. He was established as the first principal of this school. And finally, Béliveau beseeched the Sisters of St. Joseph to take over the school until 1972, which is when the school officially shut down. This is just another quote, again, just research, making sure that we were being thorough with our research. And in this screenshot, we can see that the goal was specifically to convert the local Indigenous population, and that's the part in yellow that's in the screenshot. So that the presence of the OMI, the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, in the Lake of the Woods region, began in 1850, and from then on, numerous missionaries traveled the territory with the goal of converting the local Indigenous population. This is just a list of the members of the OMI by number, and so Cahill, which was the first principal of St. Mary's Residential School, is listed as 54, and Béliveau as 61. So just tying them again to that organization. This is a photo of Langevin, Béliveau, and Cahill during one of their missions. This is a photo of the opening ceremonies at the Cross Lake Indian Residential School. And it states in the legend on the bottom that Monseigneur Arthur Béliveau is present in this photograph and for the opening ceremonies. And this is a nice segue into one of the articles that my colleague Melanie will present. So while Monseigneur Béliveau made his way out to Cross Lake for the opening ceremonies of this school, he also kept a very detailed log of his time there. He spent about 5 days there. And following that, there was an article that was published in La Liberté that basically chronicled his journey there and also praised the work that was being done there. And finally, just another picture of Béliveau at the opening ceremonies as well during this same period that we're speaking of. I'll mention this slide and I'll pass it over to Melanie. So this is a photograph of the students, the clergy, including Monseigneur Béliveau and the OMIs, the Oblates Oblate Missionaries in front of Cross Lake Residential School. And this is the photograph and the article that was described, or that is being described in the next page. So this was the event that they traveled to Cross Lake for. And again, just another snippet of an article from the Winnipeg Free Press in August 30th of 1916. And it's just an article that confirms his visit to Cross Lake. So this is the article that I'm speaking to here. It's in French. We didn't print it. It would be very hard for me. But it is in fact a chronicle of the visit of not just Béliveau, but many other religious figures to open the school, bless the school, and Collège and Monseigneur Béliveau is quoted a few times in this article. And just to bring your attention to the quote here, we realized to what extent Béliveau was involved in the founding and running of Cross Lake School. And we sort of dug deeper, and this quote, later when they asked if you are priests and we explain your way of life, your privations, your preaching to establish God's reign, they will be less indifferent. They will revere God's holy church. And years from now, if you pass through Cross Lake again, you will hear them talking about the white-robed men of prayer. So we wanted to bring your attention to this quote. In 2021, records did confirm that 84 students did in fact die at Cross Lake Residential School during Béliveau's tenure. And in just July of last year, almost 200 more anomalies were identified using ground penetrating radar. So this is in fact the legacy that Béliveau and his missionaries left behind. We did leave in the handouts, there are 3 articles in there that sort of outline discoveries from the first 84 students that were found to the continued investigation into the 180 plus anomalies that were found. That investigation is ongoing. One of those articles describes how parents were often not informed that their children had died of illnesses, accidents, or by other reasons. The bodies were not sent home. Each unmarked grave represents a life and a story that was unjustly silenced. So just to highlight the key aspects of our research, the next 2 slides serve to reiterate the objective of the Oblates, which under the praise and direction of religious figures like Béliveau, to convert the natives and save souls. That's a quote there. Our research establishes a clear link between Béliveau and this dark chapter of this country we call Canada's history. Given the fact that we continue to discover unmarked graves of stolen children, we contend that it is not appropriate to have our school associated with Monseigneur Arthur Béliveau, a historical figure who repeatedly praised what we now know to be a deeply flawed and destructive practice that continues to impact generations. As you know, we are not, as you may know, we are not the first school to request, to propose such a change. There are some precedents in your handouts as well. Thunderbird School, Kuwaitan Prairie Community School, and Prairie Sunrise School. And there's more info. The links are in those handouts as well. I will give it back to Michelle. And so again, I just wanted to emphasize that the reason we're here today is not to debate the impact of residential schools on Indigenous people here in Canada. It's just to point a link between Béliveau and, like Milani said, to establish that we don't think it's appropriate to have our school named after him. So we had a look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's 94 calls to action. And there's 12 of them. I'm not going to go through each of them, but there's 12 of them that we were able to find parallels with the reason that we are here today in supporting the name change of our school. So if you have more questions on them, I can definitely go through, but those are the ones that I myself identified as pertinent to our proposition here today. Moving forward, I also wanted to, I really appreciated that at the beginning of the meeting today, we talked about our mission and our vision and the motto of the school division, because looking at that, having a school named for someone involved in residential schools contradicts our current mission, vision, and motto of the school division. So I thought that that was pretty appropriate, and I quite liked that we started the meeting today with talking about that. We also looked at our MYSP, our multi-year strategic plan, and in each quadrant, belonging, generosity, mastery, and independence, I noticed or we identified a clause or a goal that can also be linked to our proposition here today. So I can go through each one of them, but I kind of just circled the ones that were important. The first one in the quadrant of belonging is the grade 11 English arts curriculum, and reframing that, and we were reworking that to include the history of Indigenous histories and perspectives. And so that definitely ties to the reason that we're wanting to change our name. When we dug into the research ourselves, we were able to find a lot of that information that is not necessarily talked about or that is definitely new for some people. So it's important to be able to be having those conversations in class. In the quadrant of mastery, this one was a bit of a stretch, but it talks about that social emotional learning curriculum in all classrooms. And just recently, we underwent trauma response practices in one of our PD days. And we talk about having kids that come into class who have all sorts of lived traumas. And in order to help them learn and feel safe in our classroom, well, we would want Indigenous children to feel safe and comfortable who historically have a negative relationship with the school system. So if we want to start establishing a trauma responsive practice, then how can we ask those kids to come to a classroom in a school, a building that's named after someone who was an architect in the residential school systems? In the independence quadrant, it was a 3.2 goal. And so that's this idea of enhancing student voice and agency. And I love this because the entire reason that our committee was formed is because it was students who started in a class and wrote, I think, a letter to our principal back then at the time and started that whole process to wanting to change our name. So when we're talking about kids who are wanting to be active citizens and we want to develop student agency and student voice, I think this is a great way to be able to show them that their voice does matter and that change can come from what they express in the classroom and ultimately later on in life as well. And finally, in the generosity quadrant, it's this idea of involving the whole school in teaching about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, so that's the UNDRIP. And this idea of emphasis on Indigenous worldviews and land-based education. So again, if we're talking about Indigenous issues, well, we should know the history behind residential schools, and I don't think it's appropriate to have our school named after Monsignor Béliveau based on the research that we've done. Moving forward, what? Yeah, say twice. Sorry.
So just to bring your attention to the policy for naming school, we did follow the guidelines, or the guidelines here state that a new name should meet the name considered to rename a facility, should meet all of the following criteria or other that you may determine. So that's to support the divisional vision, mission, and values, to respect the values of the community within which the facility is located, to commemorate geographical locations or landmarks or the history of the community, to commemorate individuals who have made significant contributions to education in the division, the community, region, province, or nation, to consider the history of the facility and its use, and that it does not derive from commercial or denominational bodies. So we do argue that the name of our school has moved beyond these guidelines, and it's time to maybe move forward in what those guidelines might look like now.
And if I can just add to what Melanie's saying, if we were to follow those guidelines today, Accio Béliveau's name would not, I think, comply with any of those guidelines.
So going forward, we have sort of reflected on what it would look like to rename the school, what that process might entail. And we proposed the same process that the division recently presented to the Sage Creek Committee to name their new French immersion school. So we've discussed the idea of creating a committee of teachers, students, family members, community members to select the name. Of course, consulting with the board, and with the main idea being a consensus process rather than a popularity vote. We've discussed selecting student representatives, staff representatives based on students who express their interest or staff members, including our parent advisory council and also community members who've expressed their interest in this process. And of course, current administration to select teachers who have expressed their interest. Of course, also consulting with the school division. Yes, consulting with the school division.
For the guidelines, yeah.
Yes. To conclude, I teach our school's Indigenous Studies class, and 2 years ago, my class expressed an interest in rewriting land acknowledgement specific to Collège. And that is in the handouts as well. So of course, we do recognize the First Nations and the Métis people whose lands we currently are on. But we specifically spoke to sharing the responsibility of learning about the mistakes of the past and speaking out against the systemic harms of the present. And specifically, we also found it important to include the importance of the 94 calls to action and committing to supporting students and staff by helping them identify concrete actions that ensure a sincere and honest path towards reconciliation, truth and reconciliation. And we believe that there is no better way to do that for our students, for our staff, for our community, than to rename our school. Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. It's a very interesting presentation, lots for us to think about and consider. I'm sure we have questions or comments from trustees. Mr. Walker.
Thank you for your thorough research and your presentation, coming out tonight to spend your time talking about this. I completely agree with you folks. I don't think that the name's appropriate and can move forward. Changing it.
Trustee Palmquist.
Thank you for your presentation today. I really appreciate it, and that's very compelling evidence you brought forward. I'll concede that when I first heard of this a couple of years ago, I was skeptical, particularly just to do with the sort of because what I heard initially was just sort of the general connection to the Catholic Church and to the Oblates, not a specific direct link to a specific institution or any actions. But this is very compelling evidence that you brought forward. And I wanted to maybe take a moment to, especially concerning towards the end, when you recommend concerning the reading process and policy. I worked a few years ago at City Hall when the year when the Kelowna residential school graves were first discovered and proposal came forward to rename Bishop Grant Boulevard. And I supported that at the time strongly, and there was obviously just damning evidence in linking Bishop Grant and not just Battelle Grant and not just to the specific event, but to the creation of really the whole program nationwide. But it raised a sort of uncomfortable truth that kind of kept coming forward, which is that there is this really, really deep link between Francophone culture, Franco-Manitoban culture, the French language, and the Catholic Church and today, and that and not just the French language, but indeed the Métis people and the Indigenous history of Manitoba, and right up to, I mean, I would argue even to Louis Riel, the person named after. And there's, as you point out, I think in this point that he was named originally with respect to him being a champion of the French language. Likewise was the same with Bishop Battelle Grandin, and that duality of him being a person who was an advocate for one essentially persecuted group while participating in persecution of another group is very uncomfortable. And where I'm going with this is that what it concerns me is that the direction overall, especially when you consider the history of Franco-Manitoban culture, and I would actually argue French culture worldwide, is that there's such a close cultural, political, religious link and linguistic link that the removal of people's names who have participated in these events might have the unintended consequence of damaging representation, Francophone place names, etc. And not to say that I don't think that this is like a slam dunk. I think what you brought forward here. I hope that we can, going forward, find a way to make sure that like francophone place names, of whether they be schools, streets, parks, or programs like the René Delorme Center, for example. And maybe we can look towards whether they be like more contemporary advocates of the French language, secular ones, or I mean, even if possible, with enough research, finding those people who were active in earlier eras, even from a religious background, from a Catholic Church background, that are, I suppose you can't say, clean of these allegations, but that are, relatively isolated from them. And just ensure that because of the unique character and structure of how French culture existed up until maybe the 60s or 70s, that the effect of this era doesn't result in the basically anglicization of place names everywhere because of the just lumped in link between the church and the French language. So I hope that's something that we can bear in mind going into the future in this and perhaps many. And I welcome anyone's thoughts or feedback or telling me if I'm way off base or.
I 100% agree that it's really important, especially, LRSD has an amazing French immersion program. And I know that we have a lot of staff teachers at Collège Béliveau who hold the French language program very high. And it's, I think I could speak for all of us that keeping that at the forefront is something that we don't even, not only that we want to do in renaming the school, but that we do in any activity that we do at Collège Béliveau. And so I think that might be beyond finding a name that reflects our mission and vision. Our mission and vision is primarily embracing the French language and encouraging students to learn that second language and learn in that language and have fun in that language. I think we can all agree that is our mission, that is our value. And so I think that will remain at the forefront of the process, I would say.
And to add as well, I think also we can kind of talk about this idea of naming things after people, right? That's very much like a triumphant, this idea of like colonialism, of conquering and then naming it after somebody as like this epic, right? And so I think if we look at some of the examples that have already been done, like La Voix du Nord, for example, there's ways of still naming places while maybe holding that French language to heart, and we can still have a francophone name, but that's not necessarily named after someone. So I think a general consensus when we were talking about this is maybe moving past this idea of naming it after people who generally are flawed. And so what's to say that this is not going to happen again in another 50 years where we have some new information where the name we choose is also flawed, right? So I think at the end of the day, maybe we start moving away from naming things after people. And I know that we can definitely still recognize and appreciate people who have been pillars within the French community or the French language or the arts or whatnot. So it's not to say that we can't do that, but in terms of an educational building, like at the end of the day, our role and our objective is to educate and respect all the learners that come through our doors. And I think it feels hypocritical for us to be able to stand there every morning and read this land acknowledgement that talks about concrete steps towards reconciliation, meanwhile having this name that is hurtful to a lot of people. And so I think having one person that it offends is enough for me to want to act on that, right? And that's kind of just my say on that.
And if you look at the precedents to the schools, even Avenoge and Mackinac, they are named after, they're not named after people, they're named after
the Children's
Way or Prairie Sunrise, Kuwait, they're all schools that they moved away from that, so.
And I think for us, the important next steps in the process will be that learning that we're going to do together. And I think it is important to respect some of that history of protecting the French language, having grown up with it, parents had to find his French books.
Yeah, my wife tells me that.
Yeah, it is very much that. Yeah, but also respecting that, as Rashad mentioned, that people are flawed, and unfortunately that idea of, yes, maybe he protected French language rights, the rights of others were disseminated and it was awful, right? So for us, I think that learning we can do with students and community and talking about what we value as a school and as a staff, it's how we feel when we walk in the building and see the français and the love of the language and learning together. And I think for us that'll be an important part of the process. There are many ways we can respect that and bring that to the forefront without washing it down or however you refer to it. Yeah, so we do think that's really important for sure, number one. But yeah, it's very hypocritical to read, like you said, to read that land acknowledgement when you have something in the pit of your stomach in the morning.
And last thing I'll say, we also talked about maybe having like a plaque that says like formerly known as Béliveau. And I think that's a conversation starter as well. Oh, why did we change the name? And then we can talk about that as well,
Yes.
right? So that education piece is still there. And it's not to say it's an erasure, like a erasure of it, but there's nothing that stops us from having a plaque formerly known as, and then we can discuss as to why that change came to be.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything everyone said. And not to allude in any way that, like, to defend the current name. It's more just like, I hope that we bear in mind the intent, at least, of the people who named it that, and in terms of what their objective was, which was not honoring residents, but honoring the French language, and perpetuate that same objective today, but in a better way. Although I still think that Georges Faré, a very flawed man, even though we don't have to wait 50 years to know a flawed man, but epic, and I still think that would be okay.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or comments?
Just thank you for all of the hard work that went into this presentation, all of your research. And I agree, you will come up with the name, and we'll be there. We'll be there to well, not splash the champagne, maybe some over the new name. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Nemeth, have your hand up or?
No.
Nope, okay.
Unless she wants to speak. Trustee Nemeth, are you okay?
I'm fine, but now that you've given me the opportunity, I'm just going to say I trust the process that we have embedded in policy, and look forward to the journey around this presentation. Thank you, folks, for being here today.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Nemeth, and thank you all for all the research that you've done and for the presentation. It's very interesting. I've been looking forward to hearing this. I've been following very closely the other name changes, which were more obvious than this one. I don't know why we have a school named Cecil Rhodes, quite frankly. And the Ryerson as well, even though it's named after the street, Ryerson was obviously the national architect, and we certainly should not have a school bearing that name. As Trustee Nemeth said, however, there is a process, and we can't make any promise at this point, but this is the beginning, and I'm very happy that we have begun, and I'm very happy that you mentioned that this has come from student-led. The students began this, so hopefully we can have more involvement with students and bringing that forward. And now that you've met with us, we have a process. We can bring this to the community. We can talk about other things. This two-step is change, rid of the name, then the new name. So it's not something that's going to happen immediately, but rest assured we have a process, and we will. Now that the ball started rolling, we will be looking at this. And I do have to thank Trustee Palmquist for bringing up his point. It's a touchy one, and it's a bit brave on his part to bring that up. Even though my name is Sigurdsson, I am a proud Franco-Manitoban, and who has lost a lot of the culture and the language. And now that thanks to LRSD and the wonderful work that we do, both of my children now work in the French language in their chosen professions, and something that my grandmother, who didn't speak any English at all, would be very proud of, and my mother, who's passed away, would also be very proud of it. She felt guilty in her later years that she didn't teach us because of the way society was going. And so it's important to recognize that, to recognize these things, but it's also important, as Trustee Palmquist said, that to be careful and selective. So that's why I'm very grateful that you took the time to get into the specifics of this, because I'm sure there are a lot of folks who are Franco-Manitobans of that era who had some sort of, especially if they're involved in the church, would have had some sort of connection, and if any connection at all is a blanket means for rejection, then we may have a cultural problem that may go too far. You've done the research and you've provided us with the very important information that makes the connection. Very much appreciate that. So I'm babbling on here, but just to say thank you, and it's certainly something we could talk about all night because it's such an interesting, there's so many facets to this. But I'm glad we're starting on this journey and come along with us. We're gonna get this moving. So thanks for your time and thanks for coming out and thanks for all your work.
Thank you very much.
Do you have applause or no?
Merci.
Merci. Very good. Now, how's that for French?
Bonsoir, Andrea.
Merci, merci beaucoup.
Getting kicked out of here.
Trustee Turner, or trustee, Nemeth has her hand up.
Yes? Nemeth?
Could you just confirm in terms of next steps, how we are guided by policy in with this process, the process of renaming a building or school or?
Well, the policy speaks to you having the last say. And what will guide that decision. But what I believe I'm hearing you say, although we don't have all trustees around the table, is that the journey the school wants to be on together as a community you approve of, that you're not going to get in the way of this community coming together on a journey of truth and reconciliation. That's what I heard you say tonight. And so we will support the school on their journey. And we'll be back to you with a name to consider.
Well, both the idea of changing the name and the idea of what, if that step is taken, what the new name will be, are both firmly in the control of the board and no one else. So we have control of that process, but the process leading up to the recommendations is in the hands of the community, and we can certainly oversee it and guide it. But I think we can trust the leadership team to work with them at the first stages.
Yes, exactly. I think we'll, just like you've trusted community in Sage Creek twice now, we can trust the community in Windsor Park. Well, actually, a community that extends to the whole of St. Boniface. The school's in Windsor Park, but the school serves a learning community across St. Boniface.
So everyone's move on from that. And we'll certainly have much more discussion with this at further meetings. And we will keep an eye on all developments. Because again, it is our responsibility and our call in the final say. So that has been done. We do now move on to the staffing. And 5.1 is the appointment of a term director of school and classroom support. Superintendent Michalik.
Yes, so I am recommending that the board appoint Nicholas Kelly, who is presently divisional principal, to the directorship of the school and classroom support team effective August 1st, 2025.
So the motion is that Nicholas Kelly be appointed as term director of school and classroom supports effective August 1st, 2025. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Trustee Walker, Trustee Turner. Any questions on this? Do we wish Superintendent Michalik to give any further information? I think we're satisfied.
Yes, we're satisfied.
Call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Anyone feels we're rushing, by all means, let me know. We can move on then to appointment of principal. Provide context, the SLT recommendation. The motion is that Thomas Locke be appointed as principal of J.H. Bruns Collegiate effective August 1st, 2025. And this would be to replace Megan McDonald, who's been promoted. So we have a mover and a seconder for that motion, please. Turner, Trustee Walker. Questions or comments, or perhaps I should allow.
Well, Thomas is currently principal at Niagara Place School and will continue to serve the Niagara Place school community that is a part of the J.H. Bruns Collegiate family of schools.
his new role as high school.
Very good. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Again, we have another spot to fill. 5.3 is the appointment of a vice principal. This would be Carla McMillan be appointed. The motion will be that Carla McMillan be appointed vice principal at Dakota Collegiate effective August 1st, 2025. Again, we need a mover and seconder. Trustee Palmquist, Trustee Walker. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Michalik for some context.
Carla is a teacher, student services teacher, Dakota Collegiate. Well respected. Good job.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Congratulations, Carla. We then move on to senior leadership team information to the board, 6.1. Capital projects update. Superintendent Michalik, members of the SLT will provide updates to capital projects.
Well, I'm waiting on the Manitoba government for official information related to some of the projects that were mentioned in budget. So we don't have that to share just yet. As soon as we do, we'll bring them forward in a public forum. We can report that the school we're building in Sage Creek to serve Sage Creek and Bonavista. For those families choosing French immersion, is on track to open its doors for occupancy in July and August so that we can welcome students come September. And that is all for now.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this report? Hearing none, we'll move on to 6.2, which is the Therapeutic Crisis Intervention, TCI training. Gunther, currently divisional principal, will share information regarding the TCI training, supporting and reinforce trauma responsive practices. What's he got there? Sorry.
Yep.
Off the chair. Nice. Oh, yeah.
So I'll fill the silence with what's
Sure.
going on.
By all means,
To
please do.
explain what's going on. So we're trying to be a little more technologically refined in this room, in this space, by having folks that want to present supported by a presentation, a PowerPoint, to control, to not have to rely on someone else. Tell them when, and that someone else is often our secretary, asking them to move to the next slide for an awkward presentation. So it appears it is working. Here's it.
Same as
Appreciate that. All right, thank you so much. First, I do just want to acknowledge and thank the folks who've been part of the working group for trauma and practice in the last few years. They've done a lot of research into this because there was something that surfaced from many schools in terms of wanting support around how do we support children that are in distress and how do we do some more proactive work so that we can avoid some of these crises outbursts moving forward. So a lot of work has been done by that team, and so in consultation with that with that group, the desire was to come up with an approach that would be systems wide. It would be across all schools. There's a common approach, a common language that would support the work of all folks. And so as a group, we decided on therapeutic crisis intervention for schools. It's based out of therapeutic crisis intervention, and this is the schools edition of that. So really what I'm going to go through is some of the key concepts. I'll tell you a little bit about what it is, the goals of it, what's happened so far, and some of our next steps. And so when we look at therapeutic crisis intervention for schools, it is designed as a comprehensive system to support school staff in essential tools to effectively manage crisis, support students' emotional well-being within the school environment. It is rooted in evidence-based practices. It is trauma-informed. It also provides school staff with training and knowledge in crisis prevention, intervention, and de-escalation techniques. It also emphasizes proactive strategies to create these safe, nurturing learning environments for all students. And ultimately, the end goal is really for the adult to be the source of strength for students and to respond confidently to challenging situations, while at the same time increasing a student's ability to navigate challenges in life and engage in the learning. So just the connections to the MYSP, there are some direct connections you will see for 1.3 and 3.5 when we look at trauma response practices, both in all schools and specific to the therapeutic learning space. It will also support the work, so there's an indirect connection, but also support the work around employee wellness, student wellness, holistic approaches to instruction. We're looking at social emotional learning and also student voice and agency. So what makes the systems-wide trauma-informed approach an urgent priority at this time? Well, we've noticed some rising complexity of needs. And so when I've looked back at some of the requests for services that have come in, it's about 46% were related to trauma-informed practices, so supporting student regulations, supporting adults in responding to student behavior, really wanting to do this work really well. So that has surfaced from many schools in terms of what they're looking for to support children in schools. It supports trauma-informed practices that are culturally responsive and address systemic barriers. So recognizing that without training, some of our biases and assumptions and perceptions of children further perpetuate harms and systems that we unintentionally may continue to do. And so this is an approach that addresses that or has a place in addressing that. It also focuses on building a consistent division-wide approach and a shared understanding. So it's rooted in those proactive practices that hopefully become more sustainable then, because we are all working together towards this. And then of course, when staff feel confident and competent in supporting children and youth during and being their moments of strength, it contributes to overall wellness, right? As we bring our full selves into this work, we recognize that it is emotionally related work. So we bring ourselves to this work and we want to support all the adults that are carrying these stories and the emotions that children bring with them every day. I won't go through all the theoretical frameworks, but these are some of the frameworks that TCIS is founded on. It is based, I should have said this, it's based through Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. They also have an affiliate association in London, Ontario. So we look at attachment theory, circle of courage stands out to me. Neurosequential model is at the end there, and that's something that our trauma-informed practice working group was looking at, many of these models. So it encompasses a lot of what the work has been done in pockets. Some of the research that has been done, TCI was originally developed out of a desire to support frontline workers that are working in foster homes and group care homes. That's how it began. They recognize there are many settings where children are presenting with some challenging behaviors, including schools, but schools needed a bit more of a unique approach. And so where they have done some research around this, they have found a significant reduction in outbursts. Now, some school divisions use physical restraints, which is why that is up there. We do not. We also have a policy around seclusion, and so we don't use those two strategies, but this certainly gets to the effectiveness at this approach. This is data from Sturgeon Public Schools, and that is in Alberta. You may not be able to see that as well, but hopefully we can share that with you in another way. It just shows you the effectiveness of it in terms of implementing TCIS for 2 years. So you'll see the outbursts there on the 2003 side, as compared to the 2004 to 2025 school year side, and there's a significant reduction there. You'll see at the top the types of outbursts. At the bottom, you will notice the strategies used section. So TCIS offers many different types of strategies, a lot of the ones that are just listed there. And so within the training, people practice a lot of, they talk about them, but they also do a lot of practicing and modeling for one another. So TCIS looks at becoming a trauma-informed organization. So rather than some classrooms here, some schools there doing a specific PD, they look at the whole organization. And so they look at policies, procedures, and practices. We have a number of policies that already support this work. We've got AC, respect for human diversity, ACH, diversity, equity, and inclusion, ADD, safe schools, staff development, and supporting student behavior, just to name a few that already ground this work and puts us in good stead to continue it. Looking at our procedures and practices within schools is what this will continue to help us develop, and what practices already align with some of the work in TCIS, and where can we do some shifting to support students in a bit more of a holistic way. TCIS looks at ensuring that staff understand, recognize, and respond to trauma in a culturally responsive and trauma-responsive practice and way. We certainly want to respond at the bottom there in ways that avoid re-traumatization. This is an unintentional approach that sometimes adults might use when they don't have that training or mindset. So how does it work? It works in terms of managing the environment to reduce triggers. We look at strategies like prompting, redirecting, giving choices to guide behavior, implementing some active listening, crisis co-regulation skills. The last one there, it says employing a life space interview. That's more of the nitty-gritty piece that really helps with the follow through and the re-entry of students back into the school, back into their school community, back into their activity, because that's really where we want kids to feel. We want them to be successful and feel okay about navigating those challenges and re-entering a space. So the life space interview is a format for adults to follow to support a child in re-engaging. There are a number of domains to effective TCIS implementation. So we look at student and family inclusion at the top. There always needs to be that agency of community voice. Certainly our clinicians need to be participating in that work, and they already are. We're looking at coaching and post-crisis response, training and competency standards. That's where this part really comes into play, not only in the initial training, but also the ongoing refreshers. How are we maintaining this and sustaining it so that it doesn't become just a pocket of work, that it becomes a continuous practice and a way of being. We certainly want to be documenting. It offers a way to document that I think can align with some of the work we are already doing. We don't want to add on to what people are already documenting, but how do we align what we are doing? Do we need to shift a couple of practices? And then an also important part of implementation is providing leadership with support around this. So trauma sensitive classroom. This is TCI's approach to this. It's a place, a space where all students feel safe, welcomed, and supported, and staff are responsive to the impact of trauma or on learning. So we aim to be mindful of students' adverse life experiences and their potential impact. While not assuming that every student has experienced trauma, we remain aware and responsive to those who may have. And when we look at some of this spaces within a learning space, so TCIS takes a look at the ideological space, physical, cultural, social, and emotional. We tease out and highlight spaces to better understand what may have triggered a potential problematic behavior. I won't go through these in length, but just to highlight that when we look at the ideological space, we're looking at what do we believe about learning and inclusion? What do we value as a learning community? We're looking at physical spaces. How is a child experiencing our learning spaces? While some spaces might look fun and engaging, they might also be overwhelming to students. So that's a space we really want to make sure we are being mindful of. Cultural spaces. And so our schools are rich with diverse communities and learners. So are our learning space reflective of these cultures? And do they genuinely honor and reflect the identities within our communities? We want to look at the social space. When looking at the social space, we wonder, do they have meaningful connections in this space? Do they feel a sense of belonging, success, and safety? And in the emotional space, we want to cultivate a learning environment where students learn to identify, understand, and express their emotions, to develop self-regulation and accept co-regulation support. We want them to be able to build social emotional competencies that support their emotional well-being and learning. So TCIS will say the most important tool we bring into crisis situations is ourselves. And TCIS teaches adults about the foundations of the intentionally self, which include self-awareness, right? Understanding how our attitudes, our biases, our values and life experience shape our interactions with students. We're looking at self-regulation, managing our own emotions and behaviors while staying present for that student. Relationship skills and attunement. So we're looking at actively listening, leveraging our connection, reminding the child that we're on their side, being emotionally aware and responding thoughtfully and intentionally. And then the self-care aspect, when we think about wellness for staff, wanting to make sure that staff are maintaining their own personal wellness through stress management, lifestyle and reflective practices, peer support and supervision to support our work with students. We don't want anyone to feel isolated or alone in their work. So we are hoping that this systems-wide approach will support that more collective understanding. Ultimately, there are two goals in TCIS. When this child is experiencing a moment of distress, we want to support immediately through the environment and emotional support. And then once that child is regulated and ready to accept some new ways of being and some learning and some introspective approaches, then we offer the teaching aspect of it. So it's to support and teach. We are guided by the stress model crisis in TCIS. So you will notice a bit of a different wave there. So to make intentional decisions about how to support students and apply TCIS strategies effectively, we're using the TCIS stress model of crisis. So recognizing whether a student is at baseline, you'll see that's a bit wavy because all of our baselines are a bit different. Whether they are experiencing a triggering event, whether they are escalating or in the outburst phase. You'll notice the recovery phase is at the bottom far right, which is where that meaningful teaching happens. That meaningful teaching is not happening during any of these phases, which is why in those phases, we are a source of comfort and strength for those students. You'll notice the dotted lines, those are the off-ramps. So that's where those specific strategies that TCI goes through supports adults in learning. If we identify them as being in a triggering event, these are some of the strategies where you could off-ramp. If that didn't quite work and we've moved on to escalation, here are some different strategies you can try. So it scaffolds that learning. And if we get to the outburst, how do we support them? And then how do we help them regain their dignity and support them in re-engaging? So the student always remains at the center of this process. So what have we done and where are we going? So to date, in January, I'll back up, Lisa Timchuk, which is the Supervisor of Developmental Supports, and I completed the 5-day training, which allowed us to deliver the 3-day direct training. And so far we have trained 3 groups, 2 of which will move on to the 5-day training. So they will become divisional trainers for coming up, all clinicians, principals, and vice principals will complete the 3-day training. Next year, all student services teachers and educational assistants will also receive 3-day training delivered by our divisional trainers. Additionally, all school staff, so classroom teachers, specialist teachers, custodians, administrative professionals will participate in a 1-day workshop led by principals, which Lisa and I will be creating. Really, and our goal is by investing in this work, we want to equip staff with that mindset and support. And looking ahead, we want all classroom teachers and specialist teachers to have the 3-day direct as well, because we recognize if we are not training them, what does that say about who supports kids and who is that source of strength? And so looking at, we want to be able to do that work in the next few years. So adding another cohort perhaps, and expanding our capacity, having a trainer at each school to support that work as well. Logistically, you can only have 20 people in a 3-day training group. So that's why it takes it'll take a couple of years. But, by investing, we do want to help staff with their mindset, to support them with the tools to respond to students through a consistent, trauma-informed and culturally responsive approach, one that builds on the strengths already present in our division and continues to foster staff and student wellness through inclusive practices. Thank you.
Thank you. questions or comments regarding this important information? Yes, Trustee Turner?
This is amazing. I'm really glad that you're moving on and training others to be able to handle this. There was a slide 21. Is that possible?
Sorry, slide 21.
Yeah, that was the one with the graph.
Did you want me
And I
to
must
share it
have
again?
missed something. It was the sliding graph with when you
When you off ramp,
Off ramp?
Yes.
Oh, the stress
off-
model of psych,
Yeah.
yes.
The dotted lines, you said that's where the training part of it, where you will be
Yeah,
I might have missed it. I was reading and
yeah, there was lots of information.
yeah,
So, yeah, in terms of, there's the dotted lines and then there are the solid. Solid line kind of shows the arc of where a student might progress to. Something happens, they're at baseline, and then a triggering event occurs, and then they show some behaviors, some initial behaviors that show that they are beginning, thank you, to be in distress,
the one.
right?
That's the one,
Yeah.
So at these dotted lines here is where the administrator or the teacher or whatever, that's where they would do the interventions, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't catch it all. I was reading all
Yeah.
of the top and you were talking. Sorry.
Yep, no, that's fine.
That's great. I really like this.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Trustee Walker?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Just want to say, I think there's a lot of value in this work, and I'm glad to hear that there's going to be a lot of training for our staff going forward. There are quite a few students that can use this help. So, great work.
Anyone else? Hearing none, we thank you very much for all that valuable information. And we move on then to 6.3, which is learning with the land. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Michelin.
my turn to share. Let's see. Let's give this a
It works.
try.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Theory. Oh, good. So I just want to bring the board, I want to draw the board's attention and those joining us this evening in the room, online, to an event we're planning for May 22nd. And so the event is Learning with the Land. We're going to be bringing together students from all 40 students and staff to gather at the Forks. And we're gathering to celebrate and dream. It's tied specifically to our multi-year strategic plan and strategic action 4.5. So in our plan, we are saying that by June of 27, we will have evidence that in all of our schools, we have a whole school approach, learning and teaching about the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and the UN's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous. And it'll be evident to everyone why we're teaching this, why we're learning about these two big ideas and how they're connected. And the approach we're going to take is an emphasis on land-based education done in a good way, emphasizing Indigenous worldviews. So why are we doing this? Well, because we have for generations been wanting to see this come to fruition. When it comes to the inherent rights of Indigenous peoples, it has taken generations for us to internationally have the declaration, and for Canada to. So not all countries are. The US is has still not signed on. And when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, these SDGs. And this idea of sustainability that I remember teaching about when I taught junior high and taught high school in the 80s and 90s. Here again, if we're to achieve this important work, to avoid crisis that is looming, we're going to have to connect the two. That in order to see a difference made in all of these areas, we have to acknowledge that Indigenous peoples are the ones have been suffering relative to the Sustainable Development Goals, and without them being at the heart of the journey, without Indigenous peoples being at the heart of the journey, we're just not going to make any progress. And so we have lots to celebrate. There's a lot already going on. And so I tapped a colleague on the shoulder, Sean Oliver, who's been here before to present to you as a board. And he's been doing some incredible work connecting all of these ideas. And these are just a few pictures of the work he's been doing with students at Windsor Park Region. Bringing to life what I've just shared in a very abstract way. And so I've asked him to co-create this community event along with Roy Norris, a colleague he works with to support schools, and our small but mighty communications team, Chloe, Emily, and Cody. It's so small that I've asked Lenore and Deneen to join in. And so they've been bringing folks together for the last while, and you see some of them here. We've been bringing staff and students and community together to create the event, to co-create the event. And what's guided Sean and Roy and Nicholas, who's helped support them as well, Nicholas Kelly, we talked about him earlier, is this idea of planning with heart, head, and hands. These have been the guiding questions I've heard them put to the community they've been bringing together over and over again. I'm just so excited for the day. I hope trustees will find it in their hearts to join us if they can on that day.
Thank you. Good. Very much. Any questions or comments on learning with the land? Wonderful. Sounds like a great initiative and it's gonna be a great day.
Actually, I do have a quick
Yes,
question.
sir.
Is this the type of program we might run down in South St. Mary's or South Perimeter area if we acquire the property?
Yeah, so hopefully we do find a way to become stewards of that land in the coming weeks. It's going to require partnership on the part of two levels of government, provincial and city. We're working hard to get them on board. We're not alone. So hopefully with their support, we're going to become stewards of that land, and it will be one of the many spaces where we bring all of this to life.
Sure.
Yeah, how do you choose the students and the staff that are?
We're letting
I'm
this,
guessing
yeah,
that
we're having
everybody's
community self-select. And so each school community, led by a principal, led by vice principals, have been asked to come together and decide who is doing this work, who on staff is doing this work, who are the students doing this work. We've had them present over the course of the last many months. And so hopefully no one will be left behind. And so the balance right now has been, I think we've been able to say yes to everyone who's wanting to be a part of it. And we're keeping it relatively small. We're not going to have 20,000 people at the Forks. I don't know that we have developed the wherewithal to pull that off just yet. But maybe one day that is what this turns into, that big a celebration.
Follow-up question?
My next question was gonna be, how many are you? And then.
I think we're looking at right now well over 500 students, and it continues inching bigger, and so might get close to 1,000 by the time all is said and done, and we include the adults.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Next, we move to the next expected board is the Real Teachers Association, LRTA. And secondment, so we acknowledge that and congratulate Jay McGurran as president, who's elected as president, and Aaron Loze as vice president of professional development for the 2025-2026 year. I was going to say season. Congratulations to Jay and Aaron on their positions, and we'll hold their jobs for them. And moving down to policy then, policy review committee update. I'll turn this over to Mrs. Superintendent Anderson.
Yes, thank you. Policy GBD, staff communication, received first reading at the September 17th board meeting, following which an extensive consultation process was launched. This policy supports strategic action 1.2 of the multi-year strategic plan, specifically related to employee wellness. A summary of feedback was presented to the board at the November 19th meeting, and trustees will recall that respondents expressed overwhelming support for the policy and that there was very high participation in the feedback process. Some respondents indicated that minor modifications were necessary for clarity. The working committee has considered the feedback and is presenting the policy for your consideration this evening. You will see highlights, you will see the changes highlighted in the with edits version of the policy. Next steps will involve a second consultation period, following which feedback will be considered, any necessary changes made, and the revised policy brought back to the board for adoption before the end of the school year.
Thank you. So this will be the second reading. Correct. And then there'll be further consultation and possible changes and then brought back for final adoption at the end.
Correct.
Great. So we have a motion that the policy GBD staff communication reviewed by the policy review committee received second reading and be further reviewed in committee, brought back for third reading at a future date. Mover and a seconder for this, please. Trustee Walker, Trustee Turner. Any questions or comments regarding this policy? Thank you for all your hard work. If hearing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing the final version. Okay, I'm losing the screen again. I'll carry on, but I'm just not. The screen is flickering off and on. And it might need to refresh. In any case, we're moving on to correspondence. We have some correspondence. I'll read it off here. Have correspondence received, and we have from the school, from MSBA as well from us. I haven't heard from anyone requesting that the correspondence be taken out for a review or discussion, so that will be accepted as correspondence by the board. We move on then to action items. The first action item at 9.1 is request bylaw for religious instruction at École Julie Riel. We're requiring further clarification for this, and this will be deferred to a future meeting. We do have the bylaw at 9.2, which is also from the same rules, same law, at École Varennes. And it's, the motion is that bylaw 2024-2025-003, being a bylaw to authorize the instruction of religion at École Varennes during the 2024-2025 school year, receive first, second, and third reading and be approved. So we have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Trustee Turner, trustee Walker. Further questions or comments? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried.
Yes.
Good. I think that brings us then to public question period. We have some folks present. Have any questions for clarification regarding items on today's agenda? No? Anyone online? See any hands up for questions for clarification? Seeing none, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much for your time. Minutes.